beautiful souls. Thank you for joining me on this journey we call life. You know, not sure we call it many things, but life is a good name for it, I suppose. So, as I said in a previous video, it felt like time to do another short series, and it felt like the best thing to do was to see how things go during this Mercury retrograde in both Gemini and Taurus. I'm really curious to see it because having studied, the collective and my personal and my interpersonal things that went on during the Mercury retrogrades and Mercury directs of 2020 and 2021. I'm really curious to see how this goes because those were I'm not going to go into all the details about how significant they were, but they were definitely like, they weren't all like rare things to happen, but they were not common. And because of the way that they lined up, the Mercury retrogrades of this year are all kind of on this, like, I guess the best way I could think of it is like a split personality sort of thing. And there's two things that have so far really stuck out, or three things that have really stuck out to me that have come up. One, when I was talking to my oldest Eamon about it, I asked him if he knew which Greek god often represented Mercury, and he said Janus, which is not a bad answer. It's actually Hermes. But I was like, the irony is, though, the energy of this Mercury retrograde, especially starting out in Gemini, a sign that it likes, but definitely a split personality sort of sign, and then mixing into Taurus, a sign that Mercury's not very happy in Taurus usually. It likes Gemini, but it's also like, it's like manic depressive energy. Like in Gemini, it's like, yes, 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 I love this, let's go, what are we doing? What, like that. And then in Taurus, it's like, I don't want to. Do we have to? Can't we just eat something instead? Like that sort of thing. And so because they butt up against each other and and are mixed in with each other, you probably will notice some of that energy, depending on how much you worked on your self-care. It should not, like, if you've done a lot of self-care shadow work, it shouldn't affect you too much. You might notice these changes, but if you haven't, you might really notice the intensity of this. It's much more likely, however, that for those of you who are watching this channel, like, you're probably going to notice it more in other people. And what I find helpful about videos like these, like when I watch them from other people, is that they can, give us a better perspective of what to expect. And as an astrologer, like, that's part of what I like to learn about is like, what are the different, like, what things often happen and coincide with the collective of humanity when the planets and astral bodies are in various different places. That's mostly what astrology is. It's not so much divination. You can divine the future or make predictions off of it. Yes, lots of people do that, but that's not really what astrology is. Astrology is simply a study of the connection between the people and the cosmos. And so that was the first thing, because Janus is, if you look at pictures of Janus, his head is two faces, and they're facing opposite directions, and he is the god of decisions, and he often, like, is very like, because his head's like that, right? So that is very fitting energy for this. Also, my youngest, he said something to me yesterday that was like, there's just something in me that's like, yeah, that definitely has to do with this Mercury energy, and also I think with Jupiter having just entered Aries today. And what he said was, he goes, Mom, if you think about the word touch, you don't touch. And I said, okay. And he goes, and think about the word separate, and then you touch. Isn't that funny? And I said, oh, I see what you mean. When we say the word touch, our lips don't touch. And when we say the word separate, they do touch. Like, and you would think that it would be the opposite, that somehow within the word touch we would touch. And then, okay, that's really funny. I just saw a truck that passed by that said shrooms. It was like a big semi truck, and then it showed like almost Doritos like chips, but it was like dried mushrooms. That's very interesting. Anyway, so yeah, we talked about that, and he was fascinated with that. You can say the word touch without touching your lips, or even your teeth for that matter, and then with the word separate, that you don't say it. And I kept thinking about, like, touch and separated. touch and separated, or touched and separated. Like, those seem like, the one, they're very twin flamey words, and two, they are interesting that we encounter things that you would think that it would be one way, but it's another way, and yet it still makes sense, and yet it also has things that don't quite make sense. And then, yeah, the third thing is this Jupiter in Aries energy, which I mean, I've looked at a lot of different sources. There's a lot of really good things about it. Though the good in it is in your ability to find inner peace through and flow along with a various amount of chaos. Especially because Aries is often a sign that has to do with chaos, God of War, Mars energy, things like that. If there's going to be chaos, Aries energy is probably involved. Mars energy is probably involved. And so that, and that's going to be a longer thing. Jupiter tends to take about a year to go through each sign. So, like, that energy will affect us in different ways. But when you combine the two, when you have Mercury in dual signs, Gemini, Taurus, and then you have Jupiter, the expander, the explorer, he goes inward and then he goes outward, and it's very spiritual energy. And we just left Jupiter in Pisces, which was a very, like, Walt Disney-ish magical sort of thing, and we're now, because of the way that certain retrogrades went, entering into a lot of Aries energy, even though we are in Taurus season and soon to be entering Gemini season. And so there's a lot of this Aries energy of spring. It's a little bit late, but but I ain't always there when you call, but I'm always on time, right? Like that sort of energy. Like, now it's time to get up and go. Now it's time for opportunity. Aries is also the sign of, like, business and not wheeling and dealing in a bad way, but like hustling, like doing a good thing, doing your work, making good, strong deals. Aries is the sign of the entrepreneur. And Gemini often has that same stuff too with Mercury. Like, it's all about business and communication and technology and contracts. And Aries is that divine masculine energy when it's in its evolved energy. So it's very masculine energy. It's very emperor energy. But there is also the energy of the ram, which can be stubborn. And on unevolved sides, we can see a lot of different things. So, like, over with all the energies, not just specific to Aries, but like we got overindulgence, we got egoism, confusing identity with like 3D things, relationships, labels, things like that, gossip, like attempting to use tracks or various things or technology for underhanded things, stuff like that. It's definitely a good time to spend as much time outside as you can think to spend outside, and kind of let a lot of this, like, bigger energy go into various, outer projects, working a garden, working a farm, cleaning the outside of the house, doing things like that. And it's also a good time, like, you don't want to make any deals in a Mercury retrograde. Definitely at least no new deals. You can continue on any previous deals that were already in existence and or happening before Mercury retrograde, but don't start any new ones in the middle of it. Instead, like, think about what you want to start. And then the other thing, which I learned through observing the Mercury retrogrades of the last few years, is that Mercury retrograde, a really cool thing about it is it's kind of like a sandbox, like a Minecraft sandbox, like if you think of like flat 2D world that you can turn into anything you want. And there's a lot of like 3D and 4D sandbox games too. That's just the simplest and most commonly known one that I can think of that I have played before. But in that space, you can kind of, what is it, like they say words are spells, and when you speak, you're spelling, right? So the things that you speak and the things that you put out into the world become the things that go into your sandbox during the Mercury retrograde, and then usually those are things that manifest or come about when Mercury goes direct, right? And you can add a little more oomph to that by thinking about what energy Mercury is retrograde in. So Gemini, that's like siblings, close family, mom, dad, things like that, contracts, communication, public speaking, business deals. Think the Magician card too. So it's about manifesting in its own right too. It can also be about facing shadows to do with manipulation and gaslighting and commitments and things like that. And then in Taurus, like Taurus is the Empress energy, so femininity is a really big thing. Motherhood is a really big thing. It's also the second house of career and materialism. So your actual house, your living situations, things like that. And if you have like been in a situation where you've been waiting for housing or looking for housing or trying to make an agreement for housing, that stuff might come about when Mercury goes direct and still remains in Taurus. So it'll go direct in Taurus. So housing and career stuff, if you've been, having some challenges or growth opportunities in that space, look for it to get better then. And in the meantime, think about, what do you want? What do you want if there was no shame in it? What do you want if nobody else cared? What do you want if it all paid the same? What do you want if everything was okay to want? What do you want if you could just really want what the hell you want? Like, think about that stuff. And then see what of it manifests when Mercury comes out of retrograde. Now, until then, I am thinking about how things have gone today in the start of Mercury retrograde, and how things have kind of gone over the past week and a half. Not week and a half, a week and a half to 2 weeks. See, there's some of that Mercury, like, blah, 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 like stepping over your own tongue, which has come about a fair amount, as have, like, challenges with autocorrect on the phone, and things like that. Now, I've also noticed, like, there's not, at least for me, I don't have like a return of the exes sort of energy going on. Like, I'm not really the type of person that really stays friends with my exes. My DM and my kid's dad is the only one that I really ever even had interest in doing that. Like, maybe acquaintances here and there, but like, I just don't really do that. So I don't really have anybody in the first place to pop up. The few that did popped up over the past few years, and I was like, nah, nah, and but there is a return on, I'm gonna say, like, ex-family sort of stuff, and there is a return on some things that, like, I'd intended to help figure out a way to get, like, my kids' stuff from my adopted family's house, who won't give it up unless they can have some sort of power and control over my kids, which I'm not gonna do. And then on top of that, like, revisiting some of the trauma that I went through, going through, my life, and then the more recent stuff where I had to rescue my oldest, right? So, like, it's kind of taking a moment to look at that. And, like, I even told my therapist recently, I was like, I realized, like, I hadn't even taken the time to step back and realize how traumatized I was through all of that stuff. Like, I put on my big girl panties and my brave adult face, and I got us the heck out of there, and I've been going ever since. And it's like, now is the time to stop and go, like, and what's nice, however, though, is by going about it that way, after I'd already spent a lot of time really working on me over the last year so I could get out of that situation, like, even recognizing in a metacognitive way that there is trauma there does not traumatize me in the ways that it did before. It's still there. Like, there are a certain amount of times that we experience trauma in life that, like, everything else might feel great, but we cannot do certain things. We cannot make certain calls. We cannot do certain activities. And, like, there might not be a thought in our brain that's like, don't do it, but there's resistance there. That's shadow work. That's stuff to do, right? So that's kind of stuff that I'm kind of looking at. Also, there appears to be a review of the things that have gone on over the past few years, especially the past 7 months to a year, and even on stuff that I've done, which is really, like, in terms of stuff dealing with my kids and my DM, and legalities, which is pretty common with Mercury energy, Magician energy, and even Emperor energy. Like, it's really, the question really is, like, well, not did I pass the test, but, like, did I stay within my integrity? I'm not going to say well enough, but more than enough. Not for it to be justified per se, but for it to be benevolent, to be balanced, to be, I want to sort of say righteous, but it really, like, there wasn't the intention so much in there. Like, there was a lot of, like, energy that came out from righteous indignation and stuff, and that was a large energy of it. Same with selfishness, but it wasn't selfishness so much in the state of, like, I'm just gonna do for me and be greedy, as it was, like, if I was allowed to allow myself to want what I really want and to pursue it, what would I do? What would I say? What would I want to do? If I was to let myself be mad or be, righteously indignant, like, what would I want to say? Who would I want to say it to? What things would I do? And even when I look back at everything, it's like, when what I want to do when I'm being selfish, I want to tell the truth. I want to tell the whole truth. I want to tell the truth about myself. I want to tell the truth about others, like good and bad, not just bad stuff. And like I don't want to badmouth people. I want to tell the truth. I want to be able to tell my story as it has, as I have experienced it, as others have interacted with me in all various different ways. And I wanted to be able to stand up for kids, for my kids, for other kids, and stuff like that. But also, I wanted to complete the transformation of releasing like codependent energies and continue on my healing path of releasing attachment traumas and things like that. And so that's a lot of what I worked on. And I also, like, I needed to put in a lot more self-care. I was trying to give so much of myself that I really wasn't giving much enough of myself to anyone else. It was like I had a split focus, you know what I mean? Which feels like it's kind of part of this mercurial energy. Like if you've learned the lessons on split focus and things like that, then you're probably going to be more okay. You'll be able to move and flow through different things where decisions sometimes have to be malleable or flexible. Same thing with boundaries. And then, like, if you've not learned that, if you're still in a state of, like, needing control, you're not sure how to release control or release resentments, it might be a little stickier for you. You know, it really depends. What I suggest for those of you that want some homework is to journal. You know what I mean? It's really good to do in any Mercury energy, and especially Mercury and Gemini energy, especially in a retrograde. Like, journal how you feel, journal what comes up so that you can look at it, especially if you do experience some chaos within the next few weeks. Like, then you can look at it after that and go, oh, okay, yeah, this is stuff I need to work on for me. You know what I mean? This stuff I need to work on for me or for my kids or my relationship or my career, things like that, right? And the nice thing is too, like, I mean, you know, I've just been sticking to focusing on the easier things, like not making things too complicated, doing my best to undercomplicate older growth opportunities that have been a little more complicated, and then even in moments like, yes, getting back to allowing myself to be human, to express emotions, to show vulnerability, to be in a space where I don't have to just act tough all the time, and stuff like that. And there's been, an increased number of opportunities to work on co-parenting things with my stubborn DM, and to work on bolstering confidence in both of my kiddos and stuff like that. My oldest, as I put a post up, is like, he just got his first paycheck today, and he's so happy about that, which is really, really great because, like, oh, that's weird. I'm getting some weird messages. I don't know what that's about. It might be. Looks like a picture of the old car, and it's probably from my adoptive aunt. Yeah, it's from her husband. I don't even know. I recently had an interaction with them where I tried to set up a safe arrangement so that I could get my boys' stuff back and generally clean up. I don't know why it keeps sending the message. Weird. So that I could clean up our stuff and not have that as like another thing of like, she left a big old mess and stuff and we had to flee to get out of there. And, just generally being responsible, being accountable for our stuff. And I was trying to think of a way to approach it because, like, I know that there's my own traumas to deal with. Like, I don't know if he's just, like, sending the message, like, a bajillion times or if my phone is just acting up, but it's ridiculous. Anyways, but regardless, like, I tried to think of an easy way to do it. Like, hey, can you guys just put stuff out in the driveway? I'll bring some people with me and we'll get it that way. There's no accusations of theft or property damage or anything like that. It's easy peasy. No one interacts with anybody. We get our stuff, we go. But that turned into, and I had reached out to my aunt because, for one thing, my parents had assigned her as their, at least, medical legal guardian. They didn't want me to do it, even though I was the one that took them to the hospital. I was the one that took my aunt to the hospital. I was the one that went through all that stuff. And gratefully, voluntarily, like, I used to always feel obligation towards doing that sort of stuff. But they didn't want me to do it. Like, I was their main caretaker after my aunt died. And, like, You know, and I'm not saying that they didn't put in, you know, a large amount of resources too, but like that was who they assigned. And considering the dementia and Alzheimer's that also commingle with, you know, just a lifetime of unhealthy behaviors with my parents, like I assumed that she would be the most logical and rational. But I mean, considering that she's been pretty hands off and didn't even assist me when I was trying to rescue my son from the house, um, that, you know, I mean, it wasn't unexpected that she sent a message that was effectively, I don't care to have any responsibilities for your parents. I only am legal part owner of the house, and if you want something, you know, call and talk to your mother calmly, which is their way of trying to suggest that because I was rightfully emotional about a lot of the abuses going on and a lot of the other stuff going on and the stuff going on with the kids, that I was emotional. And they are not, you don't get to feel emotions in my family typically, and especially not being the youngest among them. So like, I was just like, you know what, all right, I hear you. You're not a resource for my kids. You're not interested in being a resource for my parents, whom, whether upset with them or not, I recognize that even in my own, you know, my own trauma response, that I likely traumatized them, because most people who are abusive don't realize that they are abusive, and they're older too. So it's like, all right, well, I mean, this was my attempt to be able to handle this maturely in a way that worked for everyone. And then there was also some challenge to, like, the sense of like, oh, what is it, my kids or my adopted mom's grandkids. And it's like, you know what, you lost that right when you abused them more than one time and then refused to even acknowledge or, you know, be accountable for it, and then chose to blame my oldest for having a panic attack in the middle of a funeral where they weren't supposed to be but got invited to, and we decided to try it out. Like, I sent him with my DM and that shit happened, and then my mom sent a nasty message to me suggesting that he was performing when he is, one, autistic, and two, never had, like, not a part of his MO. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, like, you know, he was the only one at the time who was even open to a connection. But there was, you know, no calls for Christmas, no calls for Thanksgiving, no calls for New Year's. A brief text from my aunt about, we're worried about you, where he said, hey, I told them that they could call me or text me anytime. Nothing until like a few weeks before his birthday, and it was all a bunch of chit chat. You know what I mean? There was no acknowledgement of anything, and he didn't even tell me about it for a little bit because he didn't know how he felt about it. And being neurodivergent and autistic, that's a strange landscape to navigate. And when I told my mom about that, she got mad because he didn't immediately want to talk to her. And it's like, I mean, I can have empathy for, you know, dementia and old age, and even for, you know, being unaware of a lot of the pain caused, but I know that she is a smart woman, and that is not acceptable. She would never have allowed me to get away with any such thing like that when I was a child, and yet she constantly got away with stuff like that. So, like, I don't know. That is stuff that has been coming up, you know, leading up to this energy. And I don't know that I necessarily expect it to, like, continue along that way. But, like, actually, you know, it's funny, what my expectation is that this is leading out of that energy. Like, I'm going to hold my boundaries. I'm going to do what I can. I've already gone through all of the potential options that everyone else suggests. Like, the police won't really help because they're elders. And, like, there's various agencies that usually would help homeless kids, but because we're no longer homeless, they don't really do that, and they only really do it in emergency, and things of that nature. I've tried talking to CPS, but they're very, like, meh. Like, even though I've got pictures of bruises and things of that nature, they're still very meh. I tried talking to the abuse center, but they said talk to CPS, and CPS was again, you know. And it brings to the forefront of my mind yet again, like, you know, there are organizations out there that are intended to help kids and help adults in situations like this, but there's a lot of gaps. There's a lot of gaps in the middle. And so I'm thinking more and more about, like, what kind of organization, what kind of nonprofit could I in the future either, you know, be a founder of or inspire somebody to create that could fill in these gaps, you know, or how could I, like, maybe one that just seeks to connect people to various different things. Because situations like this are hard on kids. Like, I'm in a place, you know, I even told my DM the other day, because a lot of the pirates are trying to, like, or they were at least trying to, I guess, use my parents to try to make me feel excluded or something like that. I really don't fully understand it, because, like, I'm in a space to where, other than I'm not happy that my kids are unhappy about things that, like my DM doesn't connect with our oldest son. And he wants to make it all about him and all about me. It's a great immaturity. It's a great loss on his part, and it hurts my oldest son a lot. And then the same stuff with the power plays. Like, I made it clear to my aunt on my last message, because I said, even I ended it with, thank you for the parts of my life that were good that you participated in, and farewell. Because and the rest of it, it's like me and my DM, their dad, are the only ones who have any legal rights to our children. Like, the rest is, familial, and it's a social moral issue. And as far as social moral stuff goes, like, until they get therapy, if they ever decide to, because a lot of people get stubborn and refuse to do it, then there's no, like, legal precedent that I have to allow them around them. And if my DM does allow, like, our youngest around them and stuff, like, I've tried to caution him, because he was on their shit list too. And, like, all it takes is doing one or two wrong things, in their opinion, to be the next one, on the shit list, and things like that. And they were trying to take the kids from both of us too. And he's already got enough problems that I have to document in order so that I will not be somebody who is, I don't even know. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. And it's like, that stuff, it's not so much even upsetting, I guess, because I'm kind of used to it more than anything else. But it's like, the rest of my life is good. It's happy, like, I'm grateful. Like, I'm still climbing up some, like, social architecture ladders in terms of, like, getting us into bigger housing, and securing the a few jobs that can stand the test of time, and that my body with osteoarthritis can handle, and that are compatible with the flexibility that I need as a single mother who is also having to kind of overcompensate for where my DM has not yet gained experience or wisdom in parental activities and duties and things like that. So, like, I don't know, but I mean, even at that, like, those things, I'm grateful to do those things. Yes, it is easier with help. Yes, I want his help, but yes, I want some, I want community to be involved in there, because that's what's best for the kids. And, it's less taxing on me just in terms of split focus, but, like, I enjoy being a mother. I enjoy parenting. I enjoy working. I enjoy being self-sustainable and stuff like that. So, like, it's, like, where I have the challenge is that I am happy not interacting with them anymore. If they didn't have my boys' stuff, like, I mean, the only thing I really care about in my stuff is a couple of things that are pictures of me and my DM and stuff like that. And, like, I want it, yeah, but need it, no. And, is it worth going in and getting re-entangled? No, I've learned that lesson. Like, I'm comfortable just releasing it. It's, I don't know, like, we went through all this energy too to release my aunt who died of a heart attack, and I ended up burying almost all the family pets because they were older and it was their time, and dealt with a whole bunch of stuff, and we lost people through COVID. So, I mean, it's not like, I don't know, like, I already went through the grieving process. I already went through a lot of that stuff. I'll probably go through a little bit more of it later on too, but it's not much different than a lot of that stuff. And it's like, gonna happen eventually anyways. And I also am just a firm believer that, like, we should spend more time focusing on what feels good, what is healthy, what is healthiest for our children when we have children, and things like that. So, like, my focus has been more on the kids. Like, I'm not concerned about relationships, like 99 problems, and that ain't one. I could go get one if I really wanted to, but I enjoy focusing on me right now. That's a really good energy, and it fits in with Aries energy. It's very, like, me energy in both its light and shadow, and also focusing on my kids, like, what's best for them, how can I help them, how can I advocate for them, what do I need to do to untangle things with my DM, their dad, so that he will be involved in their lives, and and things like that. But otherwise, housing, work, eating healthy, good exercise, having some fun here and there, because that's an important thing too, doing my therapy, just, like, kind of regularity, I suppose. Which it's funny, because when we first entered into therapy, when my DM and we got our oldest into it, like, we discovered that I had, at least at the time, or disorganized attachment. And, like, it's because most of my life there was not really a sense of regularity. Like, there was and there wasn't. I mean, like, school was a regular thing, daycare was a fairly regular thing, but the things that happened in either location or being at home were not so regular, you know? And it feels like a very Capricorn thing too. It's like, I really enjoy the simplicity of regularity right now. I don't always, I'm capricious, just like Capricorn. There are times when I want things to be a little bit spicier, but for the most part, I like a simple life, you know? And they do say sometimes the more you get towards enlightenment, and the more you continue to reach towards that, the more you do. You appreciate things that are just simpler, that are uncomplicated. And the more I focus on that stuff, the less my mind tends to travel into places about more complicated things or things that are upsetting and stuff like that. And for me, that really feels good because I know I can even look back at my videos from a few years ago. I can look back at my journal notes and see how much of my time I spent trying to figure out how to navigate people that were just being overly complicated. You know, I'm pretty much a like, if it's easy to see and do, just do it. If it's not easy or you can't see it, either do something else for a while until it is easier or you can see it, or think of it in a different way. Like, you can always have control over how you feel, how you choose to feel about something. Not always the trigger and the initial reaction, but how you choose to see it over time. So that's where things sit today. And the Mercury retrograde will be at least 14 days. I think officially it's 12, but I'm definitely going to aim for 14. I don't know if I'll do these videos every day. I don't think they'll be as long as this one when I do them, but we'll see. And I very much appreciate you coming along for the adventure. I will see you in the next video.